3, 2, 1, now. I've been flying DCS 6 or 7 years now, and this is the first time I've witnessed a confusing launch to a new product. I would almost want to call it module, but of course it's a terrain. We're talking about Normandy 2.0. Many different people, many different opinions, whether you look on forums or watch videos. This has been really mixed up, and the problem is, if you're using Normandy 1.0 style map, thinking that you have a trial or some sort of code for Normandy 2.0, you're going to be bitterly disappointed. And I've seen people, whether they're disappointed or not, showcasing the map, flying around, and they're blown away by the number of buildings. But the scenery's a little bit naff, isn't it, when you get lower down? The reason is because, despite what DCS Shop tells you, you do not own Normandy 2.0. Yes, I'm aware if you log into your account, it says you already own it. Yes, there's already a key code. Yes, if you try and buy it, literally this message comes flashing up saying, you already own this product, caution. And so there's like 5 different ways that's going to put you off buying this. Add on to that, you've got comments from people saying, everybody's been given a free trial for this, so, you know, we all get to see it, etc., etc. No, you don't. For the first time, different versions of the same map, depending on which of the original products you already own, unless you just buy the whole thing outright in one. And so let's bring everybody up to speed as I cut in here to go over briefly which these maps are. So here we've got Normandy version 1 highlighted. Just a quick disclaimer, this is a little graphic I've made myself. I don't claim it to be 100% accurate, but it's enough to point out the situation today. I've just used an old World War II map from the actual conflict itself. So Normandy 1, the first World War II map that came out for DCS, it covers roughly the area that you see there highlighted. And then if we move over to the channel map, so this was the second World War II map that came out, was a very similar area, slightly further over to the east, just about covered some of the water as it led into London on the very northwestern side, and then down towards the south and the east, of course, we had a bit more of France included in there. Not as many airfields as the original map, but the scenery was of a much higher quality because it was a newer map. And so those two maps, until now, have been two independent, separate maps. You could not fly from one until the other. That is, of course, until Normandy version 2.0 came out the other day. What Normandy 2.0 does, whether you pay for it or not, if you already own one of the other maps or the other or both Channel and Normandy maps, you will be able to fly over both of those, assuming you own them both, as though they are one single map. So that is a huge part of this that makes Normandy 2.0 worth getting, even if you have no intention of buying it. Onto that, there is a low quality area of the map, and I've shaded it here in purple, and that shows that if you don't pay for Normandy 2.0, you will still be able to fly over these purple areas, but they will appear in low quality. And for the first half of this video, we have been flying over the low quality scenery areas. So that isn't to say there's any less buildings or buildings are missing, but much rather the quality of those buildings are very low and appear very blurry. In addition to that, I've also found that there's a lot of roads and railway networks missing. I'm not sure if that's something that's going to be resolved. That does, however, appear in version 2. Speaking of which, if you do pay for version 2, no surprise, the entire area in that yellow box is of a high quality area. And in my opinion, is not only the best map yet for DCS, it is by far the best map in DCS. It's a very high quality one, and the frame rate is very good. Those of you that own the Syria map know that that is a decent map. It is the most popular map on DCS that is not free, either Caucasus or the Marianas. In fact, it's even played more than the Marianas map. And that's a testament to the guys who are now behind this Normandy 2.0. Ugra Media, I believe they're called, or Ugra Media. I forget which one. I should perhaps have done my homework a little better there. Either way, the cost is either $10, $15 or $60, depending on if you already own two of the products, one of them, or if this is your first time. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Spitfire. We're currently flying over London, southern UK, April 1941. The area just below us there, off our left wingtip, is actually where the London City Airport is currently found. In fact, it's right there, right where those buildings are, is currently a central London dockyard at this moment in time. I'm sure if we was a little higher up and put on the EastEnders music, some of the people living from the UK would be a little more familiar. Either way, we'll make the turn around to the left and start making the ways towards the city. So right here now is, of course, a very famous part of London. Got Canary Wharf, and the few skyscrapers that the UK does have are all found on this little piece of land that is coming up right now. You can see at this moment in time, in large part is water. Perhaps that's where Canary Wharf gets its name from. Who knows? Either way, as we continue flying over the Thames, it's not the Thames, as some Americans may be encouraged to call it if they just take a look at the spelling. It's because I originally owned the Normandy 1.0 map, so the one that came out several years ago, is of course World War II themed, and seeing this map come out, I thought, oh, got excited. I saw that there was a discount. I actually had the discount available at $10 because I own the other World War II map as well. If you don't, the price is $15. Went to buy it, and it said I already owned the... I had like this flashing... Literally, it was a flashing warning. It wasn't just, oh, you already own this. It had this flashing warning saying you already own this product. And so I thought, well, $10 or not, I don't want to waste $10 on something that I already own. And so I just assumed perhaps it's some sort of a free upgrade. And so without doing any further research online, I didn't watch anybody else's videos, I didn't read what anybody had wrote in the forums, I just went to play, and of course was blown away by how many buildings there were until I flew low down. And of course, those of you who've done the same will know once you flew low down. And of course, those of you that did the same, once you went and flew down very low, you'll have been bitterly disappointed. Yes, you will have seen many buildings, but you'll have realized all the roads seem to be missing, all the railway lines seem to be missing, and the detail on the buildings low down was horrific. The trees were two-dimensional, which meant that if you remember how the clouds used to be on DCS a very long time ago, especially in VR, and as you would fly past them, the clouds would sort of turn, so they're always facing towards you, just how 2D clouds used to be. Well, the trees were exactly the same. And so, you know me, I'm thinking, this is horrific. Let me go online, find out what the situation is, because clearly got to be missing something here. Surely no map maker has released a map in this horrific state. So I went onto the forums, and what do you know? Depending on who you ask, everybody's got a different opinion on what the situation is. Some people are saying, oh, well, it's a free 2-week trial. I can see why they thought that. There's a key code activated. I thought I had a free 2-week trial. I click on my account, I click on licenses. It says you've got your free 2-week trial license. I didn't even activate a 2-week trial. And so I'm thinking, maybe this is just how it is. I watched 2 or 3 other YouTube videos at the time that people had uploaded where they're flying over and they're either in VR and or low quality, to the point where I thought, well, they've either got the low resolution like I'm seeing, or their video was of just such a quality I couldn't tell either way. Perhaps they'd lowered their settings for VR. Anyway, I decide this just can't be right. And I, reviewing all the comments, there were some that were saying something to the effect of, you get a low quality version of the map unless you pay. Now, there's going to be some people saying, well, duh, yeah. Didn't you know if you listen to what such and such said, they said that all along? The problem was different people have been saying different things all along. In the absence of I did make a post of it. And at the time of me making this video, there was no official response to my post asking for some clarity on the matter. I have, however, now dumped $10 onto the map, actually had it more or less there saved up in credits having previously bought an aircraft, I think. So I only had to chip $1 into it. The $9 came for free. And as you can see, not only do you get much higher quality, higher resolution versions of these buildings, but the trees are properly three-dimensional. They don't follow you around, depending on which angle you're looking at them from. And, of course, roads and railways. I don't know if having roads and railways in the map should be part of having to pay for that. I'm not sure how that's going to work with players flying together. Or maybe they will just see vehicles and trains driving over the empty landscape. Either way, is this worth $10, this add-on, if you already own it? Absolutely 100% yes. You know me, I'm not one for shilling for Eagle Dynamics. First of all, I don't get paid. I've not even been offered anything, and nor do I want to. I've made that clear before, and I'll say it again. I don't rely on money from Eagle Dynamics or anybody else on YouTube to try and get by day to day. If I like something, I'll say it. If I don't, I will say it. And those of you that saw what I had to say about the South Atlantic map when that came out will know I am not afraid to criticize products as and when they come out. That said, when there's good stuff come out as well, I'm certainly not afraid to say that either. And of course, when the new NVIDIA graphics card came out, I was singing DCS's praises on how that game could look. And so, yeah, coming flying into London, the first thing that's just immediately obvious is the sheer number of buildings. And if we zoom in just a little bit there, we can see just how many we've got. Churches galore. And again, I just feel it's worth saying many times, it's not just that these buildings are here, it's the way that they're not copy-pasted at 90-degree angle. This map sets a new bar. Now, sure, you can say the southern UK, northern France are very flat areas versus many parts of the world. That is, of course, true. And so while there are a very few hills and valleys, they are of a minimum. Instead, just really the impressiveness is with respect to the sheer number and quality of the buildings. And here, as we continue to fly over, once again, just letting you see some of the quality there. Incredible. Sure, some buildings are repeated, as you see there, just comes as part and parcel of it. But what you won't notice is the same building repeated in the same way over and over again at 90-degree intervals every time there's a new tile of the map that needs filling. And that there kind of proves it. You can see they're coming on and off at any which angle there. And the randomness of the building, I believe they've probably, Ugra Media, if that's apologies if I've pronounced that wrong, have used some sort of algorithm that's allowed them to basically paint buildings down, if that's the word that we want to use. And rather than just choosing the same four over and over again, there's some sort of randomization to it, although it's not completely random. So, for example, if we were to fly over the French city of Paris, you'd see it was very different, the buildings and the architecture versus the buildings and the architecture we see down here in London. And so massive props to them. This is just absolutely amazing. I mean, just look at this. It is literally beautiful. It's not quite photorealistic, but it's not far off. I'd actually say the buildings and the trees look better than the grass. If they somehow do something with the grass, and I can't explain what, this here could almost pass off as a photo. We can see in the distance as well, there's no sudden popping in and out of buildings. It's a lot more gradual. Again, it's quite difficult to tell as it loads in, which is of course what you want. It's quite immersion ruining if you see a ring 2 or 3 miles ahead of you that as buildings load into detail. And again, just look at the quality there of some of these buildings. The church there, the steeples on it. Just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Just, I can't believe it. Banks of terraced houses. Of course, many of those still around in the UK today. And so as we climb a little higher, you can see there are a few open green areas in and around the city, of course. as it is anyway. Much of this has been filled in, of course, since 1941. There is no... I have noticed, despite this being the first time I've flown this map, I have noticed there is no obvious lag as I change height between low and high. And I'm not sure how much of that was either a bug with DCS or something with previous maps. But on my particular PC setup, which those of you know is no slouch, as I would change height between low and high altitude, there would be this micro pause, and it's done that on and off for many, many months. Now, this is the very first time I've flown on this map, and it is not doing that at all. It's just not doing it. And so I'm not sure if that's down to Ugra Media or Eagle Dynamics have changed something. I did see something in the changelog, which was with respect to AMD processors. I can't quite... I'm no technical expert to say whether that is or isn't what they were talking about. But either way, this is a vast, vast improvement. I've not had a single stutter. Now, there will be those saying, well, that's because you're single player and there's nothing going on, and I grant that's absolutely the case. But even when I was single player with nothing else going on, sometimes flying over maps, certainly for the first time, there would be little stutters as things were loading in. And so once again, huge props to Ugra Media. This map is leaps and bounds ahead of anything else. I realise it's a payware map. That's going to put some people off, of course, the Caucasus being free. I realise it's a World War II era map. That's going to put some people off, especially when you're talking with the more modern aircraft. Finding suitable airfields clearly going to be a little bit of an issue. Of course, it's not impossible. It's just most of the airfields that you'll find dotted around this map will be unsuitable for the larger, faster jets. Certainly those that aren't capable of stopping quickly, like the Mirage with its chute or the Viggen with its reversers. Perhaps the F-18's probably one that's the hardest to stop, unless you can get the arrestor wire out. Alright, so let's take a rough and tumble on what is, I think, about the largest hill that I've spotted, which is tiny. It's maybe about 100 feet either way. Diving down. And the trick in the Spitfire, as with a lot of other World War II, is not to pull back too hard on the stick. At speed, you can very easily snap the wings off, both in real life and in DCS. And so here we go, the largest hill on the map. I'm not sure if it is the largest hill, but certainly one of the largest hills that I've found. And so we're venturing east out of London here, just flying through the countryside. And again, this is April, and so you can see the trees are a lot less full. You know, they're starting to come green, but they're not yet covered in leaves. It is a huge improvement. The fields are cut in line with the direction you'd expect, because the farmers ploughing up and down the field longwise where possible, and you can see that's been reflected here. Even look at this, right? This here, I'm very impressed. This may seem just so obvious, but I'm going to have to pause it for those that are not from round here. You can see there's some trees here that have cut into this particular field, okay? And you can see if you look on the tracks that the farmers actually tried farming around. You can see there, these lines aren't straight. He's curved around these trees. That is what they do. And I realize that's going to be very obvious to some. But for somebody that lives, you know, surrounded by the fields of Yorkshire, I can assure you every time that there's a tree or a few trees, that is exactly what happens, and it's nice to see that just simple little things like that have been included. Once again, one of these tiny little hills. Just beautiful. We are getting a lot of reflection off the sun. Spitfire there, just showing off how maneuverable it can be. Got elevator authority for days and wings that can hold it better than any other aircraft in DCS. Yeah, so I'm sure that if I was to fly over this same area and just wind the time forwards to June or July, we'd see much fuller trees. Again, just because I have moved the date forward to spring. I'm sure if we were to move it into autumn, I'm not sure if we'd see less full trees or if they'd be reddish, orange, yellow, or perhaps a mixture of all three. I've not been there yet. And of course, winter's still to come. They say that's the one season they still need to do. And there we go. Oh, didn't realize I was that close to the trees. 3, 2, 1. Up we go. Looping round. And I'm going to stand on the right rudder and escape that way, despite it going against engine torque. Do have a very, very small bit of wind on, just ever so slightly. Just wanted to give something to have the trees moving. Okay, so where are we now? Heathrow to our north. Okay. Yeah, this is quite impressive, I have to say. Yeah, so we'll somewhat follow the Thames in. Yeah, I'm gonna sing the praises of Ugra Media here. This map sets a new bar for just how to do cities. This is incredible. Again, it's not just the detail or the variety, it's the way the buildings are packed together. Again, not everything just patterns repeated ad nauseum at 90-degree intervals. There's something else there. It's not obvious the way that they've done it. I think they've used some sort of unique algorithm that's perhaps proprietary to themselves that lets them drop buildings down at various angles. I don't know what it is, but it's very impressive. It looks for a far more natural map. And certainly, once people start using this map to make cinematics and all the rest of it, it's going to really look good. I mean, it looks good anyway, but... DCS having come on in leaps and bounds in the last few years. I mean, it was always, since I first flew it, the best military flight simulator that you could get. There were others that were either graphically superior, but they lacked any sort of realism. There were some that were cheaper, that gave you more aircraft, but they sort of lacked the simulation depth as well, even though they weren't as bad as some of the arcade games. But really, DCS is ahead, and they've not just sat back and rested on their laurels. They've kept pushing, and through the very dark days of around 3 or 4 years ago, they've listened to the community and they've really delivered. We have to say it, man. DCS was horrific 3 or so years ago, and I'm not saying with regards to a lack of features or anything. It was quite the opposite. They were trying to bring too much to the table too quickly. The game just went increasingly unreliable. You had the same set of people just promoting everything that was coming out. Oh, look, some new eye candy over here. And just core parts of the game were just not being addressed, not being fixed. Thankfully, that is now long since past, and as far as I'm aware, a lot of the issues have been resolved. I realise there's a few that seem to be a little sticky that they're constantly working on, but at least they are working on them. St. Paul's Cathedral. Actually stood up on that dome as a kid. Our class at school got to go up there. I remember taking pictures from up there and seeing, at least back then, a lot of very dirty, grimy old buildings. I'm not sure how many of those are still there, how many have been left standing. Of course, rumour has it in World War II that the Germans explicitly tried not to bomb St. Paul's Cathedral, because not only was it a very famous landmark that helped them figure out where they were, but as you can see, it's got a very precise alignment, and so the Germans basically able to use the thing as both a marker and as an arrow, and point them, using that as a reference to find further targets. Now, that said, there were people in World War II who basically, very brave, donated their time from the British side, who would form, best way to call it, I guess, would be watch parties. And as any sort of bombs or incendiary devices came down, they would stand on the roof of the building and try and throw these off. Now, clearly, you're not catching bombs falling out of planes and throwing those off. But if you are to listen and believe the historical narrative, they were able to catch incendiary devices and throw those off. And so, whether or not that's true, I think the fact that the building is still standing is perhaps a testament that there's an element of truth to both of those stories. That there, of course, Tower Bridge, not London Bridge. I do see why people confuse the two, because I certainly would. And there, the famous London Tower off the left wing. One of the early prisons that held people who were enemies of the state. And so, yeah, with that, I think I'll come to an end.